Previously. Or could this be the first strike that Chica was talking about? Veronica's eyes widened in realization. Chica had told her to prepare for her first strike. Which means that this was just the beginning. That night, Veronica and her husband couldn't sleep as both of them were lost in their own thoughts. Veronica's husband was devastated as he kept on thinking about how he was going to raise the money for his son's treatment and how he was going to cater for his family. The little money he had with him can barely feed them for a month. He kept on thinking and devising plans on how to manage the money. Veronica, on the other hand, was just scared about what Chica told her earlier. She felt that Chica had a hand in what was happening to them. She made up her mind to tell her husband about it, but she later decided against it because he wouldn't believe her. She then decided to take matters into her own hands and know what to do about Chica's case. Because she had a feeling that Chica was no longer a normal human being. She kept on thinking about her problems before she dozed off tiredly. Chica watched Veronica through her magic ball and laughed evilly. "Yes. This is just the beginning," she said and laughed again. She then muttered some words as she rolled the magic ball in her palms. When she was done, she kept the ball under her pillow and then slept off. The next morning, which was a Saturday, Veronica woke up early to start her morning duties. Her husband was still fast asleep. As she was busy mopping the floor of the living room, something caught her attention. She saw some people in a TV program, giving testimonies about how a particular man of God had helped them with their problems. Veronica became interested. She left what she was doing and sat down on the couch. After watching the people give their testimonies, she also saw the man of God preach and prophesy to people. She became more interested. She quickly jotted down their phone number, which was displayed on the screen, and made a mental note to call them when she was less busy. Because she believed that Chica's case was no longer ordinary. Veronica continued with what she was doing. When she was done, she headed to the kitchen in order to prepare breakfast. Veronica opened the cupboard and screamed in terror. The little food they had left in the house had all gone bad. Veronica brought out all the foodstuff from the cupboard to check if it was her eyes deceiving her, but most of them were stale while the rest were rotten. Veronica placed her hands on her head and started screaming and shouting. The shout attracted the attention of her husband, who rushed into the kitchen to know what was wrong with his wife. When he got to the kitchen, he was shocked to also see the rotten foodstuffs. He was downcast. "How did it happen?" he asked. Veronica didn't answer. She continued shouting. Chica also came out from her room when she heard the noise. When she saw the spoiled food, she pretended as if she was shocked. Veronica rushed to Chica and tried to grab her, but her husband was quick enough to hold her back. Veronica shouted at the top of her voice, telling her husband that Chica was the cause of all the problems they were facing in their family. She ranted on and on while her husband listened in disbelief. When Veronica was done, her husband looked at Chica and asked her if it was true. "Yes, your miserable wife is right." Veronica and her husband were shocked at Chica's response. "Chica," Veronica's husband called in a shaky voice. Chica laughed evilly. "I have been waiting patiently for this day to come," Chica said with an evil expression. "Like I said before, I am just starting. Brace yourselves," she added, and then left the kitchen. Veronica and her husband stood in the kitchen still shocked. A message suddenly popped up on Veronica's husband's phone. He reached out for the phone in his pocket and checked the message. After reading the message, he shouted. Veronica rushed to him and checked the phone and found out that it was a message from their landlord reminding them of their rent, which was about to expire. She sighed deeply. "What are we going to do?" she asked. But her husband didn't respond. Later that morning, after they've all gotten over the shock of Chica, Veronica asked her husband what they were going to do about their son, who was in the hospital dying, because they didn't have any money to deposit for his treatment. Her husband suggested that they sell the car in order to raise a good amount of money for John's treatment, pay part of their rent and sort out some other issues. Veronica didn't agree at first. She told her husband that they needed the car for many purposes. Her husband then asked her what she wanted them to do. After thinking about it for some time, Veronica finally agreed to sell their car. It was already evening and Veronica and her family hadn't eaten anything. The children had been crying. Veronica thought of what to do. She then took them to their next-door neighbor. She knocked at the door, and when it opened, the young woman was surprised to see Veronica and her crying children. She asked her what the problem was, to which Veronica told her that they didn't have any food at home. She begged the woman for a loaf of bread to give to her children. The woman was surprised. She ushered them in. She then went into her kitchen to get something for them. When she came out, Veronica saw her holding 3 nylon bags filled with provision. Veronica was very happy. She thanked the woman and left with her children. She quickly made a simple meal and served her children. She went inside the room to call her husband. When he came out, he asked her where she got the food from. Veronica told him. He then sat down dejectedly and picked at the food. He didn't have any appetite for food at all. When they were done, he made some phone calls informing his friends about the car he wanted to sell urgently. They all promised to find a buyer for him. Veronica remembered the man of God she saw earlier on a TV program. She informed her husband about it and convinced him to join her to fight Chica spiritually because Chica was not an ordinary girl anymore. Her husband agreed. They decided to dial the number and see if it would go through, as it was already late. Surprisingly, someone answered the call. They found out that it was the man of God based on the way he was talking. They briefly explained their problems to him, and the man of God told them to come and see him the following day, which was a Sunday, so that he can pray with them and counsel them. The man of God also gave them the address of the church and prayed with them on the phone before the call finally ended. Veronica heaved a sigh of relief when the call ended. She felt a bit happy after sharing her problem with someone who she believed would be able to solve her problem. She felt assured that help would soon come. And with that, the couple were able to sleep a bit that night. The next morning, Veronica woke up early and prepared the children for church. When they were all set, they left the house for the church. They followed the address and later found the location of the church. After the service, they finally met with the man of God. After exchanging pleasantries, the man of God told them that he had a revelation about them the previous night. He told them that the main cause of their problem was their house help. Veronica nodded her head in agreement. The man of God told them that he would need to come to their house to do some prayers because Chica had deposited a lot of bad things in their house. Veronica's husband was baffled. He couldn't bring himself to believe that Chica was indeed evil. The man of God then told them that he would come to their house the next day for the prayers. Veronica gave the man of God the address of their house. The man of God finally prayed with them and then they left. Veronica and her husband were happy because the man of God was going to come to their house the next day. They looked forward to his arrival. Veronica made up her mind to even send Chica back to the village when everything returns to normal. The next day, the man of God came with 2 of his assistants. They were all welcomed warmly. After a brief talk with the couple, the prayer started. After about 15 minutes, the house started getting hot, making Chica very uncomfortable in her room. She paced about and scattered the things in her room. The prayers continued in the living room, making the house spiritually charged. Then the man of God started spraying the anointing oil all over the corners of the house. Chica screamed and then disappeared in anger. After a while, the man of God ended the prayers. They left after a brief talk with the couple. Veronica and her husband escorted the man of God and his assistants to their car. When they came back, Veronica's husband decided to give his wife some money out of the little one he had so that she will be able to buy some foodstuffs that can last them some days before they sell the car. Veronica prepared to go to the market that evening. She gave her children some biscuits and water in order to hold them a bit before she came back. She then dressed up and left. After Veronica left for the market, her husband received an urgent call from the hospital asking him to come the next day because the condition of the boy was getting worse and the little treatments they were giving him to sustain him could not carry him any longer. They needed money to start the full treatment on the boy. Veronica's husband was very worried. He promised to come to the hospital the next day to see the doctor. Immediately he dropped the call. He called his friends reminding them about the car. He even reduced the price of the car in order to get a buyer as soon as possible. They all promised to find him a buyer before the week ends. After the call, Veronica's husband became worried because he didn't know what to do again. He became restless. His only hope was in the car he wanted to sell. He continued thinking till Veronica came back. When she saw his mood, she knew instantly that something was bothering him. She asked him what the problem was. He then told her everything. Veronica became silent. She remembered her dying son and started sobbing. Chica appeared in a dark heap clutching her arm. She chanted some words and the strange-looking man appeared. He asked her why she came. Chica told him that she was badly hurt by the man of God that came to pray for Veronica. Chica also told the man that she needed more powers to complete the mission. The look on the man's face changed and became fierce. "What a shame," he said. "You're such a lazy and sluggish fellow. I gave you 6 months to complete a simple mission that others will complete in 3 months. It's already 4 months now and you've not done anything. Instead, you come here injured. Look, you only have 2 months to finish off Veronica and her family. And if you don't, you die," the man said firmly. He gave Chica a small container containing a liquid and told her to drink it. When she was done, the man gave her another glass ball and then told her to go back and complete her work. Chica appeared in her room that afternoon fuming in anger. She was very angry because her master shouted at her and called her a lazy fellow all because of Veronica. She made up her mind to deal with Veronica severely. The clock struck 1 a.m. and Chica woke up. She went out of her room to the living room with the 2 glass balls. She looked around and then headed to the children's room. She got inside the room and shut the door. Later that morning, Veronica prepared her children for school. After the children had gone, she followed her husband to the hospital to see their son. When they got to the hospital, they were taken to the boys' ward. When they saw him, they felt very sorry for him. The nurse told them that he hadn't woken up since the day they brought him there. Veronica burst into tears while her husband excused himself to go and have a word with the doctor. When he finally met the doctor, he pleaded with him to commence the treatment on his son and that he was going to pay some money that week. The doctor told him that he can't do any other thing apart from the little treatment they are giving him. The doctor also told him to hurry up with whatever he was doing because the boy had been asleep for a very long time and his health was deteriorating. Veronica's husband finally left the doctor's office. He paced about as he thought of what to do. He then decided to see his friends to see if they could raise some money for him. He left the hospital with his wife. He then told his wife that he was going to see his friends and know if he could borrow some money from them. He then left while his wife trekked home dejectedly. She was thinking about all her problems and didn't know when tears started flowing freely from her eyes. When she got home, as she made to open the gate of the house, the woman who had given her some provisions some days ago was coming out of the gate. When she saw Veronica crying, she was alarmed. She asked her what the problem was. Veronica tried to tell her, but she burst into more tears. The woman, whose name was Anita, consoled Veronica. She then decided to take her somewhere cool to make her feel better. When they got to the restaurant, Anita ordered some drinks. She then asked Veronica what the problem was again. Veronica explained everything Chika did to them, but she omitted some parts. She didn't want to tell Anita that she had been maltreating Chika before. She only told her that Chika was a witch and was causing problems in her family. Anita listened in shock. When Veronica was done explaining, she told Anita that she didn't know what to do again. Anita was also confused. She told Veronica that she was going to take her to an old woman in another state. The woman was a white witch and she would be able to stop Chika. Veronica didn't like the idea, but she didn't show it. She only told Anita that she wanted to think about it. After the long talk with Anita that day, the two women headed home. Later that evening, Veronica's husband returned home looking a bit happy. He had just succeeded in borrowing some money from his friends, and one of his friends also told him that he had gotten a buyer for the car and the person would be coming in 3 days' time to check the car. When he broke the news to his wife, she was very happy. He decided that he would go to the hospital the next day in order to deposit some money for his son's treatment. Veronica briefed her husband about her day with Anita. Her husband told her not to visit the witch Anita had told her about, to which she instantly agreed. Veronica also told her husband that she would like to go to church the next day for prayers. Later that night the family had dinner and then retired to their various rooms. When it was 1 a.m. again, Chika came out of her room holding the 2 glass balls in her hands. She entered the children's room and shut the door. The next morning, Veronica woke up very early. She dressed the children for school and served them breakfast. She then told her husband to take them to school later that morning as it was still early and she had to be in church before 7 a.m. Then she left the house. When it was 7 a.m., Veronica's husband left the house with the children. After a while he came back and prepared to go to the hospital. He then opened the drawer to take the money he kept there, but he couldn't find it. He was surprised. He checked all the drawers, but he didn't still see any money. He checked the wardrobe and everywhere in the room, but he still couldn't find the money. He then sat on the bed looking confused. How could all the money he brought home the previous day disappear just like that? He was sure he kept it in the drawer. He started to wonder if his wife had kept the money somewhere else. He dialed her number, but it was switched off. He decided to wait for her to come back. While he was waiting, he decided to clean up the car instead of sitting idly. He went outside the house and started cleaning the inside of the car. When he was done, he decided to test the car to be sure it was still working perfectly. He tried to start the engine of the car, but it wouldn't start. He tried and tried, but the car wasn't responding. He got out of the car and opened the bonnet to check if something was wrong with the car, but everything was normal. He tried the engine again, but it still wouldn't start. He became frustrated. He wondered what was going on. He considered calling a mechanic, but he didn't have the money to pay. As he sat there thinking, his wife, who was passing by, saw him in the car and walked towards him. She asked him what he was doing in the car. Her husband didn't answer her question. Instead, he asked her if she took the money he kept in the drawer. Veronica was surprised. She told him that she didn't touch the money. Her husband told her that he couldn't find the money anywhere in the room. He also told her that the car was faulty and he didn't know what was wrong with it. Veronica didn't know what else to say. She went inside the house to check the room herself. After some time, she came out looking dejected and confused. Her husband entered the room and shut the door. He was very heartbroken. How could the large sum of money I borrowed from my friends disappear from this room? He asked himself. How am I going to pay back the missing money? He thought. He continued thinking while Veronica, who was in the parlor, was also worried. when everything seemed as if they were falling in place and now they were back to square one. Veronica thought. The house was very quiet and gloomy throughout the day, and when it was night, Veronica served her children dinner. Her husband refused to come out of the room. When they were done eating, they all went to bed. A loud bang woke Veronica up in the middle of the night. She listened again and she heard the bang again. It was coming from the living room. She started to panic when the bang became persistent. She quickly alerted her husband. He was also surprised at the noise. They both left the room together and made their way quietly to the living room. The banging continued and they discovered that it was coming from outside the door. Her husband opened the door and found Anita and some of their other neighbors standing outside their porch looking sad and panicked too. One of the neighbors, the one banging the door, shouted at the couple telling them to come and see their car in flames. Veronica, her husband and the other neighbors raced to where the car was parked. But as they were approaching the car park, they saw the car engulfed in huge flames of fire. Veronica's husband stood speechlessly as he stared at his burning car. The only hope he had to pay off all the debts he owed. Veronica fell on the ground and started screaming and crying. Some neighbors gathered around her trying to console her, while some of the men called the fire service so as to put out the fire in time. After about an hour, the fire service came and the fire was quenched, but the damage had already been done. After consoling Veronica and her husband, some of the neighbors started retiring to their various apartments. Veronica was taken inside her apartment by Anita, while her husband stood transfixed looking at the burnt car in shock. He refused to go inside even after some of the neighbors tried to take him inside. He thought he was dreaming. After Anita left, Veronica couldn't sleep. She continued crying and thinking about the burnt car and the missing money. She later slept off early that morning. Around 7 a.m., Anita came to check up on Veronica. She made her a hot cup of tea and also tried to console her. She then asked Veronica about her kids because she hadn't seen them that morning. Veronica snapped out of her thoughts at the mention of her kids. She had totally forgotten about them. She headed to their room and found James seated on the bed crying. Veronica asked him why he was crying and where Lizzy was, but he refused to talk. Anita also came inside the room to know what was going on. The two women tried all they could to persuade the boy to tell them what happened to Lizzy, but he only told them that Chika told him not to say anything. Veronica was very worried. She assured James that nothing was going to happen to him and that she needed to know what happened to Lizzy. At last, he later told them that Chika came into the room at midnight and dragged Lizzy away. Chika told him not to tell anyone about it unless she would kill John. Veronica was dumbfounded. She asked James if he was sure about what he told them, to which he told them yes. Veronica and Anita rushed to Chika's room and banged at the door. They knocked and knocked, but it seemed as if Chika wasn't ready to open the door. Anita then told Veronica to stay while she allowed their husbands to come and break the door down. Having said that, Anita rushed outside while Veronica leaned on the door waiting impatiently. Then, like a flash, Chika's door opened with force, making Veronica fall inside the room, and then the door slammed shut. Veronica was shocked and startled. She turned around to see Chika in her true form. Chika saw the fear in Veronica's eyes and laughed wickedly. Veronica quickly ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was shut firmly. As she was still struggling with the door, her eyes caught Lizzy, who was seated at a corner in the room looking very strange. Veronica called her and told her to come to her side quickly, but Lizzy remained seated. Veronica was surprised. She shouted Lizzy's name, but Lizzy didn't flinch. Veronica then went to where Lizzy was sitting and tapped her. Lizzy turned to face her and then gave a devilish smile which made Veronica scream in terror. Lizzy was now possessed with the dark powers Chika transferred into her every night. Chika had trained her and had also given her her own assignment. Lizzy's assignment was to make Veronica suffer by causing more problems in the family, destroying things and being totally useless to Veronica, her mother. Chica laughed mockingly at Veronica. And then suddenly, Veronica, who was heartbroken and filled with anger, went over to Chica and slapped her across the face. She then proceeded to rain curses on Chica, calling her unprintable names. Chica only smiled, rubbed her cheek and told Veronica that she was going to regret slapping her, and then she disappeared. Lizzy also stood up from her chair, transformed into a bat, and then flew out of the window, leaving Veronica in the room all alone. Veronica cried in frustration and bitterness. She banged at the door and tried to open it, but to no avail. Veronica felt trapped. She wondered why Anita wasn't back yet. She waited and waited, but she didn't hear any sound from the house. Meanwhile, Veronica's husband was found unconscious outside the house that morning. When Anita rushed outside that time to call him, she found him lying on the ground. She tried to revive him, but he wasn't responding. She ran to call her husband and the other neighbors. When they all came out, they tried all they could in order to revive him, but all to no avail. They then decided to take him to the hospital. When he was finally taken to the hospital, he was pronounced dead on arrival. The neighbors couldn't believe it. The doctor told them that he died of a heart attack. The neighbors didn't know how to receive the news. The women were told not to say anything to Veronica yet. The men decided to deposit the man's corpse to the mortuary first before knowing what to do next. The women went home sadly. When they got home, the women went to Veronica's apartment. They were all moody. Anita then remembered Veronica and went back to Chica's room. She called Veronica's name, but there was no response. She then decided to turn the handle of the door to see if it would open. To her surprise, the door gave way and she saw Veronica sitting on the floor. She went to her and took her out of the room. Anita also went to the children's room and saw James. She also took him out of the room and then quickly made some food for him. When Veronica saw all the neighbors sit in the living room looking sad, she asked them what the matter was. But no one answered her. Instead, Anita waved the question aside by asking her what transpired between her and Chica. Veronica explained everything to the shock of everyone. Anita then asked Veronica if she had offended Chica in any way. Veronica didn't answer her. Instead, she burst into tears. She then told everyone the real story of how she maltreated Chica, how she made her sleep outside twice, and how Chica went missing for a week. Veronica explained every detail to them. The other neighbors were shocked to discover that one of Veronica's children had been ill for a very long time. When Veronica was done, they all sighed heavily. "You brought this whole problem on yourself," Anita said. "Why will you mistreat someone else's child to the point of locking her outside at night with the heavy rain?" Another woman chipped in. "She's your house help doesn't mean that she's not a human being. I never knew you were this heartless," said another woman angrily. And so on and on. The women spoke senses into Veronica while she continued crying. Later that day, the men came back from the mortuary. Then all the neighbors gathered at Veronica's house again. When Veronica saw all of them, she became surprised and suspicious. She asked them the whereabouts of her husband. No one said anything, which frustrated Veronica. She shouted at them and told them to tell her what was going on. Then one of the men broke the news to her. Veronica couldn't believe her ears. She laughed and told them that it wasn't possible. Some of the other neighbors also confirmed that her husband was dead. When it dawned on her that husband was no more, she threw herself on the floor and started crying. She cried and cried while the neighbors tried to console her. She refused to be consoled. She continued shouting Chica's name as she cried bitterly. Then after some hours, Veronica became a bit calm, but she was still shedding tears and lamenting. Later that evening, Anita, and one other woman decided to stay with Veronica for some time until she became a bit stable. Veronica was still crying. She was sad about her late husband, Lizzy and John. She kept on telling the two women to help her to save John before Chika succeeds in killing him too. The women assured her that they would do something about it. The next morning in Veronica's house, the two women woke up and made breakfast for Veronica and her son. But Veronica didn't eat. She told them that she wanted her family back. The women started consoling her again, trying to make her eat and have her bath. Later that day, the men went to the hospital where John was admitted and paid the money for his treatment. The treatment commenced immediately, and after about a week, he started getting better. 2 weeks later, the burial arrangements were made and Veronica prepared to go to the village with her 3 children for her late husband's burial. She moved all their belongings to the village. Veronica's husband was finally buried some months after his death. Immediately after her husband's burial, Lizzy started causing more problems for Veronica, making her run from one native doctor or the other. She tried effortlessly to reach Chika and beg her because it was said that she was the only one that can restore Lizzy back to her senses completely. But Chika was nowhere to be seen again. Veronica had to stay back in the village after the burial with her children because she didn't have enough money to get an apartment in the city, coupled up with Lizzy's problems too. She later started a small business in the village which struggled to grow because Lizzy was always falling sick, making Veronica to use most of her money to treat her. Veronica regretted her actions and vowed to treat everyone she comes across with love. She shared her story to everyone who cares to know, and her story became a lesson for everyone who was ill-treating anyone under them. If she had treated Chika with love, all these things wouldn't have happened to her. If you like this video, kindly give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe for more interesting and inspiring stories. Thanks for watching.